something, because I feel like by the time this calendar gets to the Act 48 committee, it's pretty far along at that point. Is it possible to have these discussions in that committee? Because that's where all these kinds of ideas could potentially be thrown around about, hey, would you rather have built-in snow days, or would you rather not have built-in snow days? I don't know, but maybe that would be something to talk about in Act 48.
I think one of the things that's really possible is to put together different draft calendars and kind of say, here's what it looks like under option 1, option 2, option 3. Weigh some of these main situations that you're talking about, right? Embedded with the Jewish holidays. Obviously this year Veterans Day is a Sunday, so we're obviously doing all of the remembrances not on Veterans Day this year, because I'm sure the schools are still doing them. The Veterans Day is a Sunday this year. And so we're making that work. So we could look at that. Because some of this always comes down to when are you okay ending school? Because there are lots of things that sound like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's all about when do you begin school and when do you end school. And so that really is the parameter you put in place, and then you build the rest of the calendar around it. If everybody's comfortable with starting before Labor Day and getting done on June 14th, there's lots of flexibility to put things into a calendar. But I'm not sure people are comfortable with both of those things. And so that's part of why I think if you build unique calendars and say for next year's Labor Day, here are some options, and let's put together 2 or 3 calendars based off of what you're used to seeing. Maybe we do some other ideas about what other school districts in the county are doing with those days, and then bring some options for people to look at if it's an easier conversation. So why don't we go ahead and build some of those, and we'll bring that back to Act 48 to be able to have some more discussion.
We do have an Act 48 meeting in November, so we can certainly share and get feedback from that committee as well before having the big calendar meeting with the county.
I'm glad you brought up other school districts, Dr. Bolton, because I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I was curious if you had any input from what you did in your previous school district. That maybe you could share when that process takes place in the building of the different drafts.
Well, the timing of the calendars are pretty similar in the school districts, in that the calendars are often approved in that January to March range, depending on how simple the process is. Some school districts churn out a similar calendar every year, so they can do it in January and February. Some school districts go back and forth with Labor Day, and so that makes it different every year, depending on when Labor Day falls, and is the last day of school a Monday, are you okay with that? You tend to do gyrations, so it's not a Monday, it's a Friday or a Thursday, things like that. I have done a calendar survey of the 12 other districts in Bucks County in a past job, and so Dr. Price and I will take a look at that in terms of just some of the things they do. How do they deal with snow days? How do they deal with the Jewish holidays? How do they deal with Easter and spring break and some of the things that other districts have that not every district does? So we can take a look at some of those options and bring you some draft calendars in November.
Okay, great. Does anyone have anything else? All right, so that brings us back to public comment. If anyone is here, state your name and municipality.
Good evening, Diane Herring, Hilltown Township. Allow me to be the first person ever to tell you Stabler is not it. Not the way it's currently set up. Okay? I find it disingenuous also to not tell everyone here and on film that the kids pay for those screens. That big video production, that comes out of the student's account. That comes out of their fundraiser money. $4,000 a year. The kids pay so their mommy and daddy get to watch them. I kind of find it disingenuous, as I said, not to be fully transparent on that expense. Secondly, the lack of planning at Stabler surrounding disabled and elderly is insufficient. The line for the elevator takes 30 to 60 minutes because it's limited access. There is no floor access. If you are in a wheelchair, the only way to the floor is through either the stairs or the elevator. I've suggested in the past, and I'll continue to suggest, if we are going to look at a facility that is indoors, that we perhaps entertain the facility in Allentown, which a number of school districts have moved to. simply because the seating arrangement in Allentown is much more conducive. In Stabler, a third of the attendees have their backs to the kids. The kids sit on the floor facing forward, and the third of the arena stares at your kid's back. The only time you get to see them, and you are the furthest away from the stage, is when they walk across the stage and they're up on the screen. But you don't actually get to see your kid because all you have is rows of green and white sitting down there. So unless you've organized it with your child to know exactly what row and where, and they wave at you when they sit down, you really don't know where your kid is if you're sitting in the back of that arena in Stabler. I personally would prefer to keep graduation indoors from a control standpoint and a date standpoint, but I would also prefer that it not be in the evening. I would prefer to take a morning or a Saturday, either way, simply for one reason. We bus the kids up there. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time they get done with a reasonable length ceremony, there's nowhere to take your kid to eat that even gives them the opportunity to pat them on the back. I mean, the only place open up there is Copperhead Grill, and that's a nightmare, okay? I catered at my house and had people come to my house simply so the kids could eat after graduation. And the other thing that happens is we put no stock into the fact that our band is there performing of their own accord. They go up hours before graduation. They don't get fed either, unless the band parents take care of them. And those kids actually miss their siblings graduating, because while they're sitting there, they're completely off angle that they don't see the screens. I can tell you all this because I've sat through this. This is my 4th graduation. I have 1 more to go, and I can tell you every dynamic because I've had them on both sides of the stream, okay? You really, if you are correct, if you've not been there and people are going to step forward and pick, at least let's be fully transparent about what the dynamics in that place are, okay? I understand there's a great consensus of people who do not want it at Hellman for various reasons, but why settle if there's another option to consider? That might be even better, because the PP&L Center has a Jumbotron that comes with it. The kids don't have to pay $4 grand a year for it then. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Terry, the place is the PPL Center?
Yeah, the PP&L Center in Allentown, they recently opened, and as far as I could tell from at least a half a dozen news stories, almost every school district, including Quakertown, has entertained going up there. Almost everyone in the valley has moved their graduation there instead of Stabler because of the in-the-round seating that they have, and that the Jumbotron is built in on all 4 sides. So there is no real bad seat in the round, and you can orchestrate the floor plan to how you want conducive to get maximum viewpoint, like you would say at a concert where the stage is aligned and 2/3 of the arena is purchasable seats and the back isn't, for argument's sake. But it's equitably size-wise bigger than Stabler, and the parking is equally as easy, and it's a pretty new facility. It's a lot more disabled friendly.
So, I mean, instead of having your options, instead of having Stabler to indoor facility, I mean, I wouldn't mind if we're going to go through this process.
So the high school study PPL,
Did they?
so Dr. Radigan had them, this must have come up before, I'm not sure why, but in the last maybe 2 years ago, they studied PPL, and I know there were concerns about the traffic afterwards getting out was horrendous where it is. It's much more expensive than Stabler. I'm trying to think, there was a third big one that jumped out there. You guys remember what the?
Yeah, I mean, I've had 2 daughters graduate from PPL. It's a beautiful facility. Last year, my daughter graduated. It took me 2 hours to get out of the parking facility. It's a nightmare parking-wise. That's probably the biggest concern that I would have about it.
I know
It's a
what-
beautiful facility, though.
I know what the third one, the third concern was that we were coming in now to that we'd be so far down the list of priority that we would get at the last choice once we join as far as what date we want for graduation. That was the third option. But it's a beautiful facility. I mean, I was at a graduation there when I worked in Allentown, and it was beautiful, but lots of people were in walking distance, and everyone here would be driving for sure, so. Just other things, there's always there's trade-offs. No matter what we do with graduation, it's going to be trade-offs. Indoors, outdoors, wherever it is indoors, wherever it is outdoors, it's going to be trade-offs, and you just have to weigh all the options. But I agree that we've talked about this so much. I think, Joan, what you said right from the very beginning, let's get the results back from the survey and see what the majority of people want.
Would you send this information for PPL Center out to us at least? So we could read it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there was a formal report, but whatever we can dig up, we'll definitely send that.
Thanks.
Okay, is there anybody else that wants to make public comment, Mrs. Solo? You could, so just state your name and municipality. You have to turn the microphone on.
Right here.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I am Morgan DeWitt. I'm Hilltown Township and I'm class of 2020. And I'd like to say that Stabler has been, Pennridge doesn't have a home. Home is where like our classmates are and where we all just get together and be as one. And we do that at Stabler. We've done that at Stabler for many years. And I think if we change that, kids won't like it. It's not about anybody else. It's about the kids. It's not about, oh, well, I want this for the future. Well, this is what the kids want. We've done this for many years, and it's never been a problem. Everybody loves Stabler. From my point, I've been at a graduation in 2017, and it was one of the best graduations I've ever been to. And you can see everything crystal clear, and it's amazing stadium. And I think if we move that outside, people are going to be very unhappy. And nobody's going to want to come to their kid's graduation. And it sucks. But I think that if we keep it at Stabler, we're not going out of the way for expenses. We're keeping our normal expense trail or whatever you want to call it. And you're not, it's home. It's where we've always been. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Earl, did you still want to make a comment?
Yeah, briefly. Sue Furlong, West Rockville Township. I don't have any pending graduates from the school, so these are just observations as a somewhat neutral person. You said you weren't going to tell the kids what the costs were. I think you need to at least tell them what their costs are, simply because they are old enough to set priorities. Do we want to spend the money? Do we not want to spend the money? They've always spent the money, so it's probably not an issue. But in clarity, if you're giving me a choice, and in one I need to spend $4,000 for a Jumbotron and the other one I don't, that's not pocket change. So you need to be upfront and just let them know. You know, it's their decision. The other problem that I have with your idea is that contracts are usually signed to reserve that space a year in advance. I think we've already signed for this year's graduation. We have not signed the contract?
No, typically Mr. Bonus signs that in November.
Okay. Well, then you need to get your survey done quickly. I thought it was in advance of that. I would go ahead and include 9th graders. I think they're close enough. They can figure this out. The only problem is if you have one class that says, no, we want to graduate at Hillman, and they forego reserving Stabler, just what you said about the PPL Center, now you're going to go to the back of the line at Stabler in terms of getting a date for the class that follows, which may want to go back to Stabler. So you need to kind of think about that situation, that you are making it a little more unstable in terms of your reservation at when you're choosing days of the week, if I'm from out of town, my grandchildren, I have no local grandchildren. They're in New York, Kentucky, Alabama, and Wisconsin. I don't want a graduation on Wednesday, because now I've got to go and take off Tuesday for travel, Wednesday for graduation, and Thursday probably for travel again. I'm going to use 3 days, incur 3 days of expense, whereas if it were on a Saturday, maybe I take off on Friday afternoon, I go to the ceremony on Saturday, spend some time with my grandchildren Sunday morning, take off, and I haven't burned up 3 vacation days that I'd rather spend with them at the beach, or something like that, short, whatever you want to call it up here. You're trying to do a one-size-fits-all survey. That doesn't work. You're wondering, will the teachers come? How do the teachers feel? Do a survey for the teachers, okay? I think the students should have the ultimate decision. It's their day. It's kind of like somebody else planning somebody's wedding. You don't have that happen. It's the student's day. And as long as they're not asking for anything inordinate, it's their day. And I really think they should have priority even over the community, as long as, the expenses are just regular expenses. I'm willing to pay for them to have a special day. And I think that, the teachers, maybe they should be willing to make a little extra effort. They're there in the evening. That's not regular school time when the graduation happens at Stabler. It's in the evening. It's beyond their normal workday. So I think teachers should be amenable to help these students that they've taught, they've nurtured, they've helped them mature whenever it happens. But it's the student's day. The other thing that I had a question about, I'm done with graduation. Middle school, somebody was talking about, if it's a snow day, can they work from home? And the remark was made for middle school through high school. I was under the impression that middle school was not taking their laptops home. They have them assigned at school, but they were not leaving the grounds. So maybe if somebody could clarify that for me, I would appreciate it. Let me just check my notes here. Again, I think one of the important things is if one class says Hellman's, have they knocked out the next class for getting a good reservation at Stabler's? Stabler's, you gotta think about that.
Thank you. And that is correct, that the laptops in the middle schools at this point do not go home with the students, but there is one for each. Although there's one for each of them,
Right.
technically they don't go home. And the other point is, I think that this decision isn't going to be a year to year. At least I wasn't thinking it was going to be a year to year, that we're going to decide each year where it's going to be, that we would make this decision with the idea that this is going to be what we're going to do, so we don't have to keep having this conversation over and over again. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay.
I'm Emma Zimmerman at Bedminster Township, and I just had a few questions about the graduation thing. Worst case scenario, if it is held at Hellman, and it does end up being, rain dates and stuff like that, I know graduation practice sometimes is an issue. Would you have 2 graduation practices, one on the field and one coming inside into the auditorium? Would that be a question of having a whole day long of doing graduation practices and asking kids to be there a whole day sitting and sitting and sitting? Another thing would be missing, if we didn't have it at Stabler, or where we normally have it, if we had it here instead. I know the last bus ride is something a lot of seniors look forward to. Me being a senior, this is my year. And so I wouldn't want to miss that kind of thing, the last chance to ride with all my friends, all my fellow graduates to the ceremony. And also the thing about taking a survey, I would be worried that it wouldn't be as structured enough to have the kids presented with all the facts. It is a choice for the kids to read everything you present to them. But
knowing high school students, a lot of times when we get quizzes from guidance through Canvas all the time, we're like, okay, I have other homework to do, click, 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 I'm done. This is an important thing, and I think kids need to know the importance of this quiz, and I think they need to know all the facts beforehand. So maybe if there was, I know we were talking about having the sheet with all the information for everything, but if there was a way that we could make sure the teachers go over that with them and read all the facts to them so they know that they're not just clicking on things, because there was the bias brought up in the questions, which I think if we're saying there's bias in presenting the facts, that there's 10 tickets versus 8 tickets or 1, then, picking the better option, having that look like the better option, is it really the better option if it looks like it? Also, I've been to the past 3 graduations. I went for a friend freshman year, and I'm in the choir. Choir actually sits closer to the bleachers than the band, which you were saying they can't see graduation. I basically sat under the bleachers for the past 2 years of graduation, and I saw everything fine. It is not an issue. Anyone can see graduation. Those screens are great. I had my boyfriend's family sat in the back row she was talking about that faces the bleachers, and they say that's the best seats they've ever seen there, because they had another son who graduated years ago. They sat on the side. They said, there's not a bad seat in there. It's really a great stadium. Everyone can see everything. It's very beautiful. I mean, most of you have been there and seen it. And I just think changing it to be here, it would be, where would we put the choir and band? Would they sit on the field? Would we have to block off a section of the bleachers for them to be seated? Would they not be able to see their friends graduate if they were held inside and then walked up to the field? It's just all those logistics questions that don't quite make sense when you're looking at it objectively. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment?
I think I'm on, yes?
Yes.
So I know this isn't graduation, that's what I wanted to make a comment about. I know, not an easy decision. I have a senior and I have a sophomore, but I also have other relatives and other children who have grown up in the district. So my kids have grown up in this district. I would just ask you to consider 2 things. One, if you're going to put a survey out, just make sure that the options that you're going to give people a choice around, here being the option, make sure that you have all of the necessary answers to questions around people with disabilities, any safety-related incidents, and prepare. And the second is, please make it clear to these kids, if they have the opportunity to have 2 parents, that if by chance it has to be inside, only one of them will see them. And just that's a trade-off that you don't have with the indoor locations, period. That's just a fact. So I just ask you to take both of those notions to heart when you're putting a survey out. Thank you.
Oh, could you state your name and municipality?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jennifer Iannetta. I have 2 children in the district and Hilltown Township, and I know a few of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Iannetta. Anyone else? There's no other public comment, then I'm going to adjourn the activities meeting, and I think we're going to personnel.